Okay, welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and I'll be your host for tonight's show. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, my husband Robert and I run a small boutique press here in Portland known as the Poetry Box. We specialize in publishing full-length poetry collections and chapbooks, and so far we have published over 90 poetry books and anthologies. So you might say we really love poetry. The Poetry Box Live series is our way of supporting our talented authors to help them connect to their audience. And we have two fabulous poets lined up for you today. Carolyn Martin from Portland, Oregon, and Deborah Velvet from Sacramento, California. Now, if any of you were joining us today expecting also to hear C.W. Emerson, Chris had an emergency and wasn't able to join us today, but he will be rescheduled later this summer. So let's get this party started with our first reader, Carolyn Martin, author of Nothing More to Lose. From associate professor of English to management trainer to retiree, Carolyn Martin is a lover of gardening and snorkeling, feral cats and backyard birds, writing and photography. After years of producing academic papers and business books, she discovered that poetry is the way her heart and mind interact with the world. Her poems have appeared in journals throughout North America, Australia, and the UK, and her fifth full-length poetry collection, The Catalog of Small Contentments, will be released by the Poetry Box in August. She is the book review editor for the Oregon Poetry Association and the poetry editor of Cosmos Quarterly Journal for Global Transformation. Please welcome Carolyn Martin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Shawn, Robert, the Poetry Box, what a gift to allow Deborah and me to share our poetry with family and friends across the country. Not too many presses do this kind of thing, so a big, big thanks. And also, I have a very special thanks to a beautiful 83-year-old friend, Therese Colbert Derringer, who permitted me to use the major events of her autobiography to create my chapbook, Nothing More to Lose. When Therese was 7, her family was smuggled out of Hungary during the Nazi occupation. And they spent the next 7 years roaming throughout Germany, battling starvation, battling sickness, until finally they arrive in Los Angeles in 1953 and begin a new life. As you'll hear, Therese's story is one of resilience and faith, and ultimately it's a love story. I've been inspired by it, and I hope you will too. So I'd like to begin with the very first poem in the book called Danger. And all of the pieces in the book, both the poetry and the prose, are written in chronological order. And except for a few variations, they're each written in Therese's voice. So none of the poems are in my voice. So Danger. It begins with a quotation by Therese, who says, "I was raised to be afraid." And it's written in 2 parts. Part 1, Pest, Hungary, 1939-1944. Pest is a very small medieval town in southern Hungary where Therese was born. First came the drunken Serbians, ugly border-crossing hooligans pillaging the little life we owned. Next, peddlers of cloth, wooden spoons, pots and pans, and child-stealing caravans doing what they're bound to do. Then air raids ripping through a town not worth a bomb, scurrying us down cellar steps where mother slept with her satchel full of documents, father with his file cutting tools. I fill the darkness in between. Last, Nazi soldiers marching through our streets with voices so beautiful. I fell in love with songs I did not understand. How could a child of 7 know death comes disguised as melodies playing over cracked cobblestones? I want one, I cried in my mother's arms. The yellow star I try to rip off a playmate's coat. This The morning playing outside ceased. Trucks rolled through every night, muting screams of yellow stars. Why do stars disappear? I asked. My Catholic mother could not say. 3 officers, blonde, blue-eyed, armed, quartered in our home. No children of his own, the eldest sat me on his lap and sang. Hitler lost, he knew. Stalin on the way. To Dresden, his plan for our escape. Warm clothes, poultry, flour sacks, butchered pigs, and a railroad car marked classified. Money gets you nowhere, Blue Eyes said. Food is currency. A 10-hour trip took 3 weeks. My father stayed behind. Part 2, from Pest to Dresden, 1944. The route was straight, we thought, except for bombings, reroutes, stalls, screaming, crying, whining, day and night. Sleep on straw, pee through holes, break the darkness once a day. Red Cross soup slides through the sliding door. Then the Vienna stop. Soldiers yank us out, grenades shatter cars, and gypsy body parts stain the air. We are next to die. Classified does not translate. But sirens translate into Allied bombs that hit and hit and hit the blue Danube. Nazis run, we run, 3 hours bunkered in the dark with anguish and despair. For years, beyond in America, sneering kids would taunt. She bleached her hair. They didn't see humans blown apart or trains rubbled to the ground. They didn't hear my mother scream when she freed me from her arms and saw her child's hair turned white. The trauma of that journey literally turned half of Teresa's hair white. For me, the other astonishing thing about that poem is the role of the Nazi officer. As you read through Nothing More to Lose, there are these moments of exquisite, heroic kindness in the midst of horrible, horrible events. And this Nazi officer was one of those acts of kindness. We're not done with him yet. If you recall the line, my father stayed behind to take care of some family and friends. So the next poem is one of 2 written in Janusz Kolbert's voice, Teresa's dad. And it's titled, Who Knew an Angel Wore a Nazi Uniform? From Pest to Dresden, November 1944. I stayed behind and hid out with our blue-eyed friend. Stalin and death searched for him as certain as they searched for me. He planned our escape in a freight car filled with machinery and straw, crushed me in between wheels and gears and grease, covered me with smells of sunshine and manure. You're hiding someone. German soldiers hopped on the train, accusing him of treachery. No one, I swear, his protest. I swear no one's here. They kicked their way around the car. Worn down boots barely missed my life. I prayed without a breath. Rants ceased, silence, then one shot. I never heard my Nazi's voice again. So that man gave his life for Teresa's dad. And Janusz finally makes it to Dresden in December of 1944 and is reunited with his family. And like thousands of others, they become civilian prisoners. And they are forced to work not for money, but for lodging and for food. So the next poem is entitled Inferno, and it has a date attached to it. What's today's date? The 20th of February. We were supposed to have this reading last Saturday, the 13th of February. So talk about serendipity. This poem, Inferno, Dresden, February 13th, 1945. So 17 years and 1 week ago was the beginning of the Dresden bombing. So Inferno. My father goes to work every day, blindfolded, bussed for miles away from our lives on the outskirts of culture and history. Lowered underground into artificial light, 8-hour shifts building airplanes for Hitler's lost campaign. Who knows why he refused to go that day? Rumors, angels, rumblings in his gut, and risked being shot for staying home. I would rather die with my family. He stands his ground. His frantic wife cries. We go to bed terrified of German guns bursting through our doors. No comfort of sleep before sirens scream and Allied planes send hell from the skies. Fire invades everywhere, turning blind night into blinding day. We scramble down our sloping yard into the creek below. Waiting in the wet saves our lives. At dawn, my father carries me. My mother clutches her case. Along with caravans of stunned souls, we pass the body-bloated Elbe and stumble onto railroad tracks. Days and days and days before we find a train heading west, bound for 7 starving years in the madness of Germany. In her autobiography, Therese will say, for 7 years, I went to bed hungry and got up hungry. And her father will comment that the rations were 500 calories a day. And Janoshed said, too much to die with, too little to live on. Now, we're still in 1945, and the war is coming to an end, and that's the title of the poem. The war is ending. They're living in a suburb of Munich called Berghagel, which was once the site, or still was the site, of a Hitler youth camp. The war is ending, Berghagel, Germany, 1945. And it is still horrible. We'd be walking anywhere when suddenly Allied bombs would fly so low, we could almost touch their wings, almost feel their engines' heat. They couldn't see Hungarian eyes, or Yugoslavs, or Ukrainians. They'd shoot anyone in sight. We'd dive into ditches, hide in piles of manure, anywhere to stay alive. Then the first wave of Americans. For hours, Black soldiers marched through town. I never saw a Black person before, never knew there was such a thing. Americans are Black, my child's first thought. I remember their big tanks and big smiles, their snipers guarding their men going house to house, routing German soldiers out. The rest of us left unharmed, untraumatized. I have to tell you this, when war is war, horror comes in many forms. I saw the Germans in Hungary. I saw the Russians everywhere. But the American army, commendable above the rest. And that was so good to hear after all the horror, right? So 1947, 2 years later, Mrs. Colbert has twins. So now there are 5 mouths to feed. And they are spending weeks and months in hospitals with pneumonia, diphtheria, typhoid fever, and scarlet fever. And besides being starving, they are so sick, and this is all of these civilian prisoners, that Germany finally is fed up. And this is what starts to happen in 1952 in the Munich holding camp. The Germans couldn't wait to kick us out. Too many starving mouths, too much sickness and death. So they made a deal. They'd build holding camps and Americans would screen the likes of us, then ship us off to any state with jobs and roofs. 3 months in Munich, 30 to 40 in a room. Evenings, we learned American songs and watched cowboys shoot it out on dusty streets, ride across red landscapes we had no concept of. Sometimes We'd hear the Philharmonic play, the classics at the Kaiserplatz. And if we could find a way, we'd get a seat in the Munich Opera. What we didn't know, a Catholic priest in Los Angeles is finding lodging and work for 40,000 refugees, 900 at a time. We are 5. This is Father Matthias Laney, who came over to Germany, saw the horrendous conditions, and literally got the archdiocese to sponsor 40,000 refugees. And what was an unknown fact to me, and probably to most people, that a lot of the financing of that movement came from Jewish businessmen in the Los Angeles area. Again, the kindness, the unexpected kindness in the midst of all this horror. So the Colberts arrive in America, in Los Angeles in 1952. They find an apartment. Janusz gets work. The kids go to school. And Therese, at age 17, finds and meets a handsome blue-eyed blonde by the name of Carl, and she marries him. And it is only years later that she discovers he is the son of a Nazi millionaire. And Carl had spent years in Hitler youth camps. And as Therese will come to realize, they taught Carl well. 26 years of neglect and abuse. And finally, their marriage culminates on the day when Carl tries to murder her in front of their children. She divorces him, and not too long later, she meets an incredible human being by the name of Corky Derringer, a widower with 8 children of his own. 4 years of courtship, and finally they marry in 1985. And as Therese says in her autobiography, my kids need to know this. The happiest years of my life have been with Corky. And I asked her, well, why does she say that? And she gave me a whole list of reasons that became the second to the last piece in Nothing More to Lose. And I'd like to just share a few segments of that. So why were those years the best years of her life? The piece is called Why? Because he knew that new love comes slowly after the terror of the old. Because he took my scared, broken self into his bathroom one day and made me look in the mirror. Repeat after me, he said. Therese, you are a beautiful, wonderful person. Because when I said, no, he said, say it louder. And I did. Because my mother grew to love him like a son and told me, no one on earth is ever going to love you more than this man. Because she died in his arms. Because when I didn't know if I was going to live or die, he loved me through breast cancer. Because every morning he brought me coffee in bed and repeated this litany. Therese, you are my kissable love, my adorable love, my lovable love. I will love you always, always. You are my wife, my sweetheart, my lover, my companion, my friend. Because he was Corky, my rock, and I miss his hugs, his kisses, and his voice. Corky died in 2014, and Therese still lives in the Vancouver, Washington home that she shared with him. And I saw her yesterday, and she told me that one of Corky's daughters is going to be a great grandmother. So that will make Therese a great, great grandmother. So a story that begins with great horror and hardship transforms into a story of great love that still continues today. And I hope you will find out more about Therese and her journey in Nothing More to Lose. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, Carolyn. You know, I've read these poems, I've worked on this book with you, and still just hearing you bring this story to life just moves me to tears, moves me to joy over the ending. I mean, it is just it's an unbelievable story, and such a testimony to the spirit of human, how good it can be, and how you can overcome some really, really horrific, ugly things and still live happily ever after. And it's just, like you said, it's a beautiful love story. And I'm just so grateful that you wrote it, because it's just, everybody should read this. It's so enriching. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So it's time for our next reader. Deborah is the author of Building a Woman, which was one of the finalists for our 2020 chapbook contest. Deborah Meltvedt is a high school teacher who loves to blend medical science and art in both the classroom and in her own writing. Deborah grew up in the suburbs and fields of the San Joaquin Valley, whose landscapes and culture form a backbone to her poetry. As a doctor's daughter and feminist, she feels strongly about women's health and reproductive rights, and respecting the traditional and non-traditional paths women may take in their lives. Her poems and stories have been published in the American River Literary Review, Susurrus, Under the Gum Tree, Thule Review, The Poeming Pigeon, and the creative nonfiction anthology, What I Didn't Know, True Stories of Becoming a Teacher. Deborah lives in Sacramento with her funny and supportive husband, Rick Cushman, and their cat, Anchovy Jack. It's my pleasure to welcome Deborah Meltvedt.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's just, first of all, Carolyn, that was pretty amazing and really, really powerful. So thank you for your voice, and I'm honored to share this reading with you. And of course, Shawn, thank you and the Poetry Box for giving me this opportunity. So my book is, yes, Building a Woman. Here's the picture here. I think I can do that justice. And what I'm really also thrilled about today is when I'm looking at people who logged on, people in my life. And this book is a lot about the women I grew up with and still know, are new people I've met. So I see in the audience today, women I've known since kindergarten. My sister outlaw, niece is here, coworkers. And it's just really meaningful to me, because a lot of this writing came out of obviously knowing all of you and what we went through. And also, I want to thank Jan Haig, who's here, and Team Haig. I have Team Haig people here who we write every Saturday under the guru of wonderful Jan Haig, where a lot of these poems came out of. So I wanted to mention that. And hello, Rick, and Anchovy Jack in the other room as well. So. And the other thing is that a lot of this is dedicated also to my mother. So my first poem is called Rain as Story. When I was a child, I drank the rain. April mornings, my sister and I, mouths like baby birds, feeling wicked and wild. We flung out arms, twirled on wet grass, feet freezing, hair sopping, slapping cheeks. But the tulip tree never looked so pink against the storm clouds, or our mother so pleased watching behind pelted glass, her daughters, the globe spinners. Before we would slow ourselves, fret over thunderstorms and ruined looks, before we would hurry off the lawn, pull tight the rain jackets, and let the world spin us, before we would begin to hate ourselves and hate the taste of rain. My second one is called Derby Day, basically May 2007, and basically took place in a hospital room with my mom. Derby Day. You saw us choose, pick our favorites, point out bitten nails sealed in plastic against the tiny print of the sports section on that Kentucky Derby Day. Number 7, number 12, with names like Lucky George, Galloping Go Likely, or Sparks Will Fly. You heard us roar, our masks pulled down for full throttle screams, as if we were spectators in the stands, wearing flaming hats, throwing rose petals to the sweaty backs of bays and grays. And we, the ones you've birthed and fallen for, the ones you've let out the gate, your son and daughters, who brought you the paper, the sports section you loved, the wilted roses dying on the sill. We almost never noticed how you opted out, refused the bets, refused to look. Instead, you lay back, ivy drip, mind wide open. But I think you heard us cheer, the collective cry for the horse that came from far behind, some 9.5 lengths, towards glory, towards rest. And I too closed my eyes, let tissues fall like confetti in room 408, listening to the thunder of hearts bursting and wanting deep down inside to slow the last lap of that famous race. And my next one is called Reading Ourselves. And this is a lot to my sisters and my girlfriends as we were learning a lot. Reading Ourselves. We want to believe we were poetry in motion, ready to be read that summer like Dickinson's Wild Nights. We were poetry with painted eyes, stanzas shaking silver, our arms waving laughter, tank tops moving like Nereido's pen across a mountaintop. We drank the white and the red, the ones boys bought us, as we metered up and down the bar with no ID, just an opening line that asked, "Please like me." Our smiles a simile like the shyness of a child pleading at your knee. The boys bought us the white and the red. We didn't question being dizzy on the dance floor. We thought we were weak-hearted. We hoped we were both worth this recitation. We hoped we were worth the recitation of, "Damn girl, you look good tonight." I like to think nothing awful really happened. Too many girlfriends standing with claws ready. I like to think we were cupped in men's hands, understood between difficult lines, even if it took years to find our way to reading ourselves. And my next one, and as it was said, I grew up in a doctor's family. My father was a gynecologist obstetrician. And so a lot of my writing and why I went into health education too was being raised in this environment. So there's actually two on this. Here's the first one. Doctor's office. I grew up in the land of gynecology, women waiting. There's the push of heavy doors into my father's practice. We are dropped into the back room like shopping bags to wait with Highlights magazine and obstetrical manuals, eating saltine crackers and drinking 7-Up. We play with the silliness of plastic wombs, finger fallopian tubes, think of drawing fat smiles on the moose head likeness of uterine anatomy charts. In later years, we work in his office, in the kingdom of white coats, women waiting. Words like mittelschmerz, yeast infections, and salpingo-oophorectomy fall easily off our tongues. We laugh at the woman on the other side of the phone who claims her vibrator makes her pee. And we look down solemn-eyed when the sound of the Doppler goes silent against the bulge of a belly that ripened once, then shriveled. Years later, I make my own appointments in towns far from my father's reign. And when my name is called, I squeeze polite lip through a room of sausage-legged and swollen bodies, of women giving so much more of themselves away. Years later, I kill time lying against paper sheets, bite my own tongue when the doctor reaches for something soft beneath my soul, learn to scoot down and shut up, to stare up at ceilings, waiting. Sort of in the same frame, but this is to lighten things a little bit. This is a poem that was also published by the Poetry Box and a recent, wonderful book about pop culture. So I'm grateful for having it published in that as well. And it's called 1959. Barbie doll and the pill were born the same year. And I can't help but picture not Malibu Barbie or business Barbie, but clinic patient Barbie. In the Planned Parenthood waiting room, curved legs crossed nervously, pink toes jutting upward, while outside, Ken doll leans on the toy red convertible, smoking candy cigarettes, not hearing when his girlfriend's name is called, and Barbie keeps repeating, "It's just Barbie," until realizing, oh shit, it's doll. for the blank space of last name on the medical history form. On the scale, Barbie weighs 0.0507 pounds, and the clinic workers all sigh and say, "Wow, how do you do it?" They find a paper gown that opens in the back, and Clinic Barbie meets Gyno Barbie, who is broad-chested and keeps rubber gloves in her pocket and says, "Scoot down, honey, just relax." And while Barbie's legs flex in stirrups, the doctor gasps. Seems Mattel forgot an opening or two. But I would be proud of Clinic Barbie, who may be fake in looks, plastic in body, but if she's going to mess with Ken, at least she's not going to end up being teenage mom Barbie. The toy store just needs to stock the right accessories. Tiny pink pill packets, a plastic speculum, a penis for Ken. Then Clinic Patient Barbie becomes the gift we really want for a daughter or niece, as we imagine the TV ads, hear the jingles between Saturday morning cartoons. Clinic Barbie combed her hair, waiting pretty in a clinic chair. The days were gone of teddy bears. Our little Barbie had grown-up cares. But she was smart and Ken was cute, though both had missing birthday suits. We like to think before the deed, Barb told Ken, "Let's wait to breed." The downtown clinic was safe and free. Barb filled out forms and Ken agreed to get some pills and condoms too. Clinic Barbie is responsible. Are you? That one was fun. That actually started in my creative writing club with my high school students at school. So, and I think I just have a couple more. On this one, it's called the MRI, and even though this book is a lot about obviously women in my lives, it's also a lot about my husband who supports me so much, and especially with a lot of anxiety that I have about a lot of things in life. And this one is called the MRI. The technician told me he knew as soon as I put my hand up and grabbed metal. Before I yelled, "Stop," before I cried, "I can't do it." He said he gets 2 or 3 just like me every day. Then added, "Maybe another time. Then it's okay." When I return to the waiting room, my husband looks up and says, "So soon?" And my tears start again. So he holds me, lets me unfold, hears me sob saying, "The Valium didn't work." Outside, the sky is drizzling. In the parking garage, my husband has trouble figuring out the payment machine. The attendant is patient. "No, like this, no problem." There are 3 or 4 an hour just like him every day. We pull out of darkness. The parking garage lever lifts. A mother opens blinds. The child unlocks her bedroom door. We pull out of darkness because the doctor judged that the technician was kind, because somebody says, "No worries, we see you. We see 3 or 4 or more just like you every day, just like you." And my last one, and of course you can read more by getting the book. This is just a little snap. Last one is actually should be dedicated to our cat, Anchovy Jack. And it's called The Big Dipper. It goes, "My cat drops kibble in the shape of constellations. In our kitchen, you need to be careful not to step on crunchy stars. In his first life of 9, before we claimed him, someone kicked our cat in the jaw and sent him flying. The foster cat for free became the $900 aftermath of annual teeth cleaning and tooth extraction. To eat, he starts with a mouthful of dry food, then loses half the battle. But in violence, stars were born. A 10-pound pack of fur and bone and very few teeth somehow gives hope in a world of angry boots. Gives me hope when I read about the darkest corners of humans carrying torches that never give light. And I realize that even the smallest of critters can survive hatred and even make me laugh when I look down and see the sky on the most ordinary of earthly floors." So thank you very much. Put back in. Appreciate it. Thanks. Oh, I like the Barbie doll I'm seeing too. Yes. Yes. Thank you. And thanks again for listening, and hope you enjoy more poems in my book here.
Thank you, Deborah. That was fantastic. And Chubby Jack is one lucky cat. He really is. And I have to say, in listening to all these poems today, of course, I love the Barbie, the Guy No Barbie doll, poem. That's just fun. But the one that's called Doctor's Office, I thought you really captured the whole gynecology experience perfectly, because it's a room, it's a place where we go as women that we share some of the greatest joy, some of the biggest fears, some of the biggest insecurities. And between stanzas, between the lines of your poem, you jump back between all those emotions in the most fabulous way. And you really kind of captured it all. So I really commend you on that. I think that was really a great piece.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank all of our fantastic poets tonight, and thank all of you for joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. As poets and authors have been impacted by the closure of bookstores and reading venues across the country, it means the world to us that you joined us on Zoom to celebrate their poetry. Next month, our show will be on Saturday, March 13th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And our featured poets next month will be Doreen Stock, Barbara Meyer, and Mark Thalman. To keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and submission opportunities, please subscribe to our newsletter by going to thepoetrybox.com, where you'll find a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage. And by the way, there's about 8 days left for our annual chapbook contest. This is the 4th year we've been running it. It'll be going through the end of February. And the judge this time is the wonderful Annie Lightheart. And so you can find all the details on our website. Just click on the menu where it says contest, and you'll find all the details there. So thanks again for joining us today. I'm going to unmute everyone. So if you want to chat with the poets or ask them any questions, feel free. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next month.
Woo-woo-woo. Great job.
It's wonderful. And Carolyn, that was the 3rd time I heard the book, because I read it twice. It was beautiful. I'm touched every time.